Tommy Watkins and the false accusation, Lucy's fierce defense of an innocent boy. The arrival of the police at Phil's Fat Boy Burgers transforms the already precarious atmosphere of Lucy's second night of moonlighting into something far more consequential than spilled milkshakes and broken dishes. Up to this point, the comedy has remained largely contained within the familiar boundaries of workplace incompetence and managerial exasperation. With the entrance of the officers, the narrative expands outward into questions of justice, loyalty, and the moral cost of self-preservation. The young man who has been the sole consistent source of kindness in Lucy's chaotic shift, Tommy Watkins, is suddenly the focus of official suspicion, and the audience watches Lucy's response with the particular pleasure reserved for those moments when her fundamental decency overrides every practical calculation of self-interest. The physical staging of the arrest is handled with the series' characteristic efficiency. Tommy has just placed his order, a rare hamburger with everything on it and a Fat Boy mall, when the officers approach. The request for identification, the examination of his papers, and the calm, almost bored explanation that somebody answering your description was seen stripping a car last night are delivered with the procedural detachment of men performing a routine task. Tommy's immediate, quiet denial, "Oh, wasn't me," carries the particular vulnerability of a teenager, suddenly confronted by institutional power. The officer's reply, "I hope not, son," is neither cruel nor especially kind. It is the voice of a system that has already decided the next procedural step. "You're gonna have to come down the station and answer a couple of questions." Lucy's reaction is instantaneous and absolute. The moment she understands what is happening, every consideration of her own precarious employment vanishes. What's wrong? Where are they taking him? The question is directed at the air as much as at anyone specific, the beginning of a rising wave of protective outrage. When she learns the accusation cops say, "It was stupid cars last night," her response is pure unhesitating certainty. "Last night? He couldn't have. He was right here helping me all night." The declaration is not the product of careful recollection or strategic calculation. It is the spontaneous eruption of a woman who knows what she has witnessed, and refuses to allow that knowledge to be ignored. The manager's intervention at this critical juncture is a masterpiece of self-interested obstruction. "Dum-dum, you're not going anywhere." "But I want to, I am short-handed here." The reduction of Lucy to dum-dum is both casually insulting and revealing of the power dynamic that has governed the entire drive-in sequence. The manager sees only the immediate operational problem, a missing car hop on a busy night, and is prepared to sacrifice an innocent boy's freedom to maintain the flow of hamburgers and malts. Lucy's insistence that Tommy is innocent is met with the classic authoritarian dismissal. "If he's innocent, he doesn't need any help." The line is delivered with the complacent certainty of a man who has never had to rely on the testimony of others to establish his own blamelessness. What follows is one of the purest expressions of Lucy Carmichael's moral core in the entire composite narrative. She does not negotiate. She does not calculate the cost to her employment or her already damaged financial situation. She simply declares her intention to go to the police station and tell them the truth. When the manager issues the ultimatum, "If you leave here, you're fired," Lucy's response is immediate and absolute: "You can't fire me, why not? I quit." The reversal is pure character. She will not remain in a workplace that demands the abandonment of an innocent person as the price of continued employment. The manager's final futile "you're fired" lands on empty air. Lucy has already moved beyond his authority. The telephone conversation with Mary Jane that follows is a study in the aftermath of moral decision. Lucy's voice carries the particular mixture of exhaustion, pride, and residual panic that accompanies any act of genuine courage. "I'm not working there anymore. I got fired. No, some teenage boy got arrested and I knew he was innocent, so I went over to the police station and I got him out of it." The summary is characteristically understated. What the audience has just witnessed as a dramatic confrontation is reduced in Lucy's telling to a simple sequence of facts. The longer story is deferred. "It's a long story, I'll tell you later," because the immediate problem remains the same one that drove her to the drive-in in the first place: the need to raise money to replace Mooney's destroyed television. The return to the bank and the inevitable confrontation with Mooney constitutes one of the most delicately balanced scenes in the entire narrative. Lucy's attempt to avoid the subject of the broken set is met with Mooney's characteristic directness. "What's this about breaking my television set? Don't evade the question, did you break it?" Her admission, "Ah yes," is followed by the expected explosion. "You're fired." The declaration is delivered with the full force of institutional authority, yet the subsequent exchange reveals the complicated emotional undercurrents that have always defined their relationship. Lucy's tears, her protest that she has been fired before but not from 2 jobs in one day, and her desperate explanation that the moonlighting was undertaken solely to pay for the destroyed set create a moment of genuine pathos beneath the comedy. Mooney's response to this information is a perfect encapsulation of his character. The initial impulse to fire her is undercut by the practical realization that an unemployed Lucy will never be able to repay him. "If you're out of a job, you won't be able to pay me for my television set." The logic is pure Mooney, self-interested, slightly mean-spirited, and yet ultimately protective of both his own financial interest and indirectly of Lucy's continued employment. The proposed solution, a deduction of $25 a week from her salary until the debt is cleared, is presented as a reasonable compromise, yet Lucy's immediate calculation of its impact on her ability to live reveals the harsh arithmetic of her economic reality. "Well, that doesn't even give me enough to live on. What are you trying to do, starve me to death?" Mooney's muttered "don't give me ideas" is the perfect button on the exchange. A flash of dark humor that acknowledges the extremity of the situation without ever fully committing to cruelty. The arrival of Mr. Cheever and the subsequent revelation that Tommy Watkins is the son of one of the bank's largest depositors constitutes the narrative's first major reversal of fortune. The scene is structured with exquisite comic timing. Cheever's initial appearance is framed as a potential disaster. "What has she done now?" only to resolve into unexpected praise. "That boy you helped last night happened to be the son of one of our largest depositors, Walter Watkins." The information lands with the force of pure comic providence. Lucy's instinctive defense of an innocent teenager has, through no strategic calculation of her own, aligned her with the interests of the bank's most valuable clients. The subsequent presentation of the gift television set is handled with the series' characteristic blend of warmth and irony. Cheever's declaration that Lucy is a credit to our bank and Mooney's hastily revised assessment, "I've always said that, sir," create a moment of pure institutional hypocrisy that the audience is invited to enjoy without mentif bitterness. The television itself, presented as a reward for civic-minded behavior, is both a practical solution to Lucy's original problem and a perfect symbol of the narrative's moral logic. Genuine decency, even when it appears to conflict with immediate self-interest, ultimately produces its own form of restitution. Mooney's final maneuver regarding the set, his initial claim that he will take it himself, followed by the reluctant acknowledgement that it belongs to Lucy, is a masterclass in the comedy of suppressed generosity. "Very well, it's yours. Enjoy it while you're standing in line outside the unemployment office." The threat is pure bluster, and both characters know it. When Lucy finally accepts the set as her own, the moment carries the particular satisfaction of a moral and practical resolution achieved through the most unlikely sequence of disasters and acts of principle. Throughout these sequences, the writing and the performances maintain a careful balance between farce and genuine ethical inquiry. Lucy's decision to quit her job rather than abandon Tommy is never presented as a grand heroic gesture. It is simply the only possible action available to a woman who cannot tolerate the injustice unfolding in front of her. The comedy arises from the collision between this absolute moral clarity and the practical chaos it produces: the lost wages, the confrontation with Mooney, the temporary threat of unemployment. Yet, the narrative never punishes her for the decision. Instead, it arranges through the improbable, but emotionally satisfying mechanism of Tommy's parentage, a form of comic justice that rewards the very impulsiveness that has always defined her character. The broader cultural resonance of the Tommy Watkins subplot should not be overlooked. In the context of 1960s American television, the image of a working woman risking her livelihood to defend a teenage boy against a false accusation carries a quiet but persistent progressive charge. The police are not demonized. They are simply doing their job according to the information available to them. The true antagonist is the system of economic precarity that makes Lucy's act of conscience so costly and the managerial authority that attempts to enforce silence as the price of continued employment. By allowing Lucy to reject that bargain and by ultimately rewarding her for the rejection, the narrative affirms a vision of individual moral agency that remains one of the series' most enduring strengths. Lucille Ball's performance in these scenes is a study in the seamless integration of physical comedy and emotional truth. The frantic energy of the drive-in disasters gives way in the confrontation with the police and the manager to a stillness and clarity that are more powerful than any slapstick routine. When she declares that she quits, the line is delivered without melodrama or self-congratulation. It is simply the necessary next step in a sequence of actions governed by an internal moral logic that the audience has come to trust completely. Gail Gordon's Mooney, forced to navigate the complicated territory between institutional authority and reluctant admiration, provides the perfect counterweight. His threats of termination and his schemes of financial deduction are undercut at every turn by the visible evidence of a man who knows he has been outmaneuvered by his secretary's better nature, and is not entirely unhappy about the defeat. By the time the reward television has been claimed and the immediate crisis of restitution has been resolved, the audience has witnessed something more significant than a simple comic reversal. They have watched Lucy Carmichael choose under pressure and at real personal cost, the more difficult path of truth-telling and loyalty. That the universe of the series ultimately rearranges itself to reward that choice is not a failure of realism but a deliberate affirmation of the moral comedy that the Lucy Show practiced at its best, the conviction that decency, however chaotic its expression, remains the most reliable form of practical wisdom available to its characters and by extension to its audience.